What's going on YouTube? We're back in the kitchen today getting ready for our New Year's party, and I'm going to be bringing a pistachio cake. We're not going to take any shortcuts on the batter. We're not going to use any pistachio pudding. We're actually going to grind up pistachios into a meal to complement the cake flour. Keep it really light and airy with a ton of egg whites, but it's still going to be rich, decadent, super ono. I can't wait for you guys to taste it. I can't wait to taste it myself. So let's get cooking.
All right, let's get going. This is for a 9 by 13 inch pan. Let's get our ingredients. 2 1/3 cups of cake flour is going to be our base for the batter. 2 cups of pistachios. I use salted. You can go salted or unsalted. 2 teaspoons of baking powder, and then a ½ teaspoon of baking soda. We're going to use a full teaspoon of salt here. 3/4 cups of softened butter. It's really important that your butter's soft, and I'll show you why later on. We're going to do 1 1/3 cups of granulated sugar, 5 large egg whites, a ½ cup of heavy cream, plus 2 teaspoons of vinegar at room temperature, or you could just use a ½ cup of sour cream, whatever you got on hand. 1 cup of whole milk at room temperature, 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of almond extract, and then of course we're going to finish it with 2 drops of green food coloring. If you got the time, do your own cream cheese frosting. Otherwise you can go store-bought. We're going to prep our pan with a little parchment paper. So I'm cutting slits in the corners of my parchment so I can kind of fit it in a little easier, and I'm just going to sprinkle some water so that my parchment sticks to the pan. And this is kind of a nice trick so that your parchment doesn't slide around. You can kind of get it in there, get your corners situated, and we'll set that to the side. Preheat the oven at 350. And then we're going to go ahead and start our pistachios. Now the goal here is to create kind of like a pistachio meal, almost like a coarse pistachio flour. We don't want to go all the way down until it's pistachio butter. We want to stop right before that. So that's the goal. You're going to just go ahead and pulse your pistachios. I love that beautiful green color that comes out of there. I'm going to give it a couple taps and keep grinding. And I might have ground it just over the edge. I would prefer it to be a little bit less sticky, a little more coarse, but it's okay. It'll work. I'm just going to have to use a whisk to go ahead and break that up. So I'm going to break up my pistachio bits here, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in my baking soda, baking powder, and my salt. And we're going to do that, make sure we incorporate it nice and evenly. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but pistachio was actually considered food for royalty in the past. So I always like to think of a pistachio cake or pistachio desserts as like something super special. And there's just the fact that most of the time, when you think of pistachios, think of shelling them and all the trouble it takes. So a pistachio dessert always kind of has a special place. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add in my cake flour as soon as all of that is well incorporated and mixed in. I'm just going to go ahead and add it a little bit at a time and just make sure that everything is stirred together nice and well. The first time I had a pistachio cake was actually a coworker who made it for me, and I'll never forget it. It was such a good, delicious cake that I had I think I had 3 helpings of it. I can't help myself. I'm just like a pig when it comes to desserts. Anyway, ever since I had that cake, it's always been one of my favorites. And so I found a recipe online that I really, really like. This actually comes from Sally's Baking Addiction. So if you get a chance, do me a favor, go ahead and visit her website. She deserves all the credit for this. And you can also check out her YouTube channel as well. Okay, I'm going to prep my KitchenAid with a whisk. If you have a mixer, now's the time to use it. I'm going to cream my butter and sugar. And if you don't have a mixer, this is why it's crucial to have room temperature butter, because you are definitely going to get a forearm exercise. You're not going to necessarily whip it fluffy, but you definitely want to incorporate that sugar until it's nice and creamed. So I'm going to use that whisk to kind of break up my butter. And it's not fully aerated, but it is nice and incorporated. Adding in my egg whites here. And I'm just going to go ahead and continue to mix, but I'm going to start super slow, and then I'll keep ramping up the speed until I can kind of start to whisk those egg whites around with my butter sugar mix. Yeah, pistachios are definitely one of my favorite nuts. Pistachios and mac nuts. I feel like if I ever think about what are the most, decadent nuts of all of the nuts and legumes, it's the macadamia nut and the pistachio. That's my go-to ultimate treat. Okay, I'm gonna aerate this just a bit, and I'm not fully whipping it, but you can see that I've got some air in there. It's a little fluffier than it was before. And once it is nice and mixed like that, I can go ahead and start to mix in the sour cream. So if you got sour cream, or if you have heavy cream and vinegar, you're gonna go ahead and put that mixture in there. And this is also a good opportunity to put in your extracts, your almond and your vanilla. And I'm switching over to a paddle attachment now, because I'm gonna start to mix in my dry ingredients, and I don't want to overmix here. So this is kind of critical. I want things well incorporated, but I don't want to really just beat down this batter. So once I see that the vanilla is mixed in and my almond extract is mixed in, I'm gonna go ahead and add in the dry ingredients. I'm just gonna go a little bit at a time here, making sure that as I do it, I'm not kind of putting too much all at once and making it too much work for my mixer. Again, I don't want to overmix, but I definitely want to make sure that everything is getting well incorporated. Once I get all of the dry ingredients in there and it looks like it's well absorbed, I am going to add in the milk, the last part of the liquid. Before I do that though, I think I'm probably going to need to scrape down the sides of the bowl. I can see that there is some dry spots that are forming around the outside edge, so scrape down the sides of the bowl, and I'm going to add in the milk. I made a little bit of a mistake here. I should have actually added my milk in slowly. I turned it on all at once, and I'm very lucky that I didn't lose half my milk when I turned it on, and everything didn't fly out of the bowl. But you saw how that could have been a disaster. Anyway, I highly recommend you add in the milk a little at a time until everything's well mixed. Then you can go ahead and add in your food coloring, and that's going to give it a little extra kick of green, just to boost up that naturally pale pistachio color, so it's a little more vibrant. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 drops, and I think I'm going to stop there because I don't really want it to affect the chemistry of my batter. There's one thing that I've noticed baking is that food coloring actually can affect the chemistry of your batter, whatever you're baking. So you don't want to go too crazy and add too much. All right, so we got our pan all ready, and we're gonna go ahead and load it up with the batter. I'm gonna try to pour as evenly as I can, getting all of the batter out of my mixing bowl and into the pan, but also trying to kind of evenly spread it around so I don't have to work so hard to use my spatula to work it into the corners. But it looks like I'm still gonna have to do that, so scrape the bowl down and we'll get that batter into the corners of the pan. Now this part's kind of important. If you're doing the cake that you expect to rise significantly, you're always going to want to kind of push your batter towards the edge of the pan, because it will have this tendency to make a giant hump right in the middle. And if you do that, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but just for presentation, it'll be a very lopsided cake. And then of course you have the risk of having the corners of your cake be dry and then the middle of your cake being uncooked. So it's a good idea to try to push your batter into the corners of your pan. Now, this recipe actually is originally created as a layer cake recipe, so it was supposed to be 3 9-inch rounds, and you do it in layers. But because I'm taking this to a party and it's kind of a potluck situation, I did not want to deal with the hassle of trying to take a triple layer cake anywhere outside of my house. So we're gonna go ahead and do the single layer 9 by 13, slide that in a preheated oven. And in the meantime, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on the dishes. I've got about 18 to 20 minutes before I check my pistachio cake the first time. And I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure I get everything cleaned up so that I have less to do later on. So dish is done. I still have some time, so I'm gonna go ahead and chop my nuts for topping. So I got my 2 faves I was telling you about, macadamia nuts and pistachios. I'm gonna use the leftover pistachios from whatever's left in the bag, and just a handful of macadamia nuts that I had in the fridge that I was gonna use for snacking, but they've been in the fridge for a while, so I want to make sure I use them up. Gonna give these a nice fine chop, or actually it's gonna be a little bit of a mix. Some pieces are gonna be a little coarser than others, and some are gonna be much finer. But I think that's fine, especially if you're gonna do it as kind of a topping for your cake. It does not need to be perfect. Okay, so I actually had to check this a few times, and it took about 25 minutes in my oven, but you're gonna want to just keep checking with a toothpick until it comes out clean. And you want to get as close to that point as soon as it comes out clean as possible, because you don't want to overbake this cake. This is such a good cake, and you don't want it to dry out. Okay, I don't have the time, so I'm going to use my friend Duncan to make the frosting. And I would highly encourage you to do your own homemade cream cheese frosting if you do have the time, because it's super simple. Just cream cheese, powdered sugar, a squeeze of lemon juice. But for me today, all I'm going to do to kind of zhuzh this up is give it a couple taps of cinnamon into a tub of cream cheese frosting and just whip it up. I always, if you're going to use the store-bought stuff, you want to loosen that frosting up, because you never know if anything is separated or if the frosting is a little hard. You want to make sure that it's spreadable and it doesn't tear your cake as soon as you try to spread it on top. So I'm going to glop this over, and you can see just by whisking it, it made it much more spreadable. And I did give my cake a chance to fully cool. So that took about 35 minutes, 40 minutes before most of the heat had dissipated. And that was also because I had put it on this cooling rack. If you just leave your cake on the counter or on the stove, it will take longer, because that heat is not going to be able to escape your pan. But I'm just ever so slowly trying not to rip the top of the cake, because it is very fragile. And I'm just slowly spreading this cream cheese frosting across the top. And once I get some decent coverage here, I go in with a finer spatula just to make a little quick pattern. It makes it look a little bit better for presentation's sake. And so yeah, I'm just doing these little semicircles all the way across till the end. And of course, we're going to finish it off with those finely and coarse chopped macadamia nuts and pistachios that we had done. Oh man, this cake smells so good. I really can't wait to eat it, and I wish you could smell it. You've got to bake this cake. It's so worth it. It's not that hard. I can definitely vouch for the fact that I am not a cake baker, but this is a cake that I will be baking on a regular basis. This is actually the third time I've made it since I've tried Sally's recipe, and it's so good that this is going to be a staple for me for sure. Oh man, look at how good that looks. All that beautiful mac nuts and pistachios on top of that cream cheese frosting. There's that luxurious pistachio cake. It's fluffy, it's rich, it's luxurious, and the taste is amazing. I'm not gonna lie. You're going to love this cake.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. It was a ton of fun hanging out with you today. If you like what you saw, please hit the subscribe button. That tells me I should be making more of these. Happy 2025 to you and your family. Stay safe, and I will see you next time on the next episode of Art Bento.